wanted to share the process of how an etching is made. I've loved etchings for years before I ever figured out what goes into making one. And now that I've been at it for a little while, I just think the process is so interesting, so I thought I would take you through all the steps of how I made this one. So first, an overview. Take a copper plate, cover it with an acid-resistant ground. Make a drawing in the ground layer, then submerge the plate in acid. The acid etches or eats away everywhere your drawing has exposed the copper. Then rinse and remove the ground layer. Flood the plate with ink, then wipe the plate so the surface is clean but the recessed lines are still full of ink. Put a damp sheet of paper on the plate and run it through an etching press. The ink is transferred to the paper and you have a print. So those are the basic steps, and now I'll show you what it looks like for real, at least in our shop. First, I cut the plate to size. The copper is scored repeatedly with a drawing tool, then snapped and the edges deburred and filed. The plate is then degreased. Using calcium carbonate, I rub and clean the plate, then a solution of vinegar and salt removes any tarnish, and then the plate is clean and ready to accept the ground layer. The clean plate is then heated. I'm using a hard ball ground, which is a tar-like, resiny, asphaltamy thing. The warm copper melts the ground so that it can be rolled out into a thin layer, and when cooled, this ground layer is very tough and protects the plate from the acid. Next, I'll transfer my sketch to the plate. The nature of printmaking is that the final print is a mirror image of the plate. In the final, if I want the character looking to the right, I have to draw her looking to the left. So I trace the original drawing and flip the tracing paper over before positioning it on the plate. Slide in a sheet of transfer paper, retrace everything, and it leaves an excellent guide layer to start drawing. This is just a sewing needle I glued into a dowel, but I use all kinds of drawing tools, handmade or not. I'm only removing ground, not actually making marks in the metal, so drawing feels smooth and natural. This is sort of the edge that etching has over engraving, which is it doesn't take a lot of skill to start making marks. Now it's time to submerge the plate in acid. I say acid, but I'm actually using ferric chloride to etch the copper. Traditional etching made use of mostly hydrochloric or nitric acid, but with those you have to be a lot more careful about the fumes, and if I had to do that, I guarantee I would be dead by now. In etching, the boldness of the lines are controlled by how long the plate is in the acid. The longer the plate is submerged, the deeper the lines, so the darker they'll print. After about 20 minutes, I pull the plate, rinse it off to stop the etching, and use solvents to remove the ground layer. This is such old world magic, that a drawing can be recorded into a piece of metal in perfect resolution. Never gets old. So now I pull my first print to see how it's looking. The metal table is warmed from below to keep the stiff ink more fluid. I spread the ink all around the plate, making sure all the lines are filled. Then using a stiffened cheesecloth called tarlatan, I wipe the surface clean. I lay a damp sheet of cheap drawing paper on the ink plate and run it through the press. There's always an element of surprise each time you see the print. Like a potter unloading a kiln, you can never calculate exactly how it will turn out. In this case, pretty shitty. Lots of work to do. But maybe the most surprising part about this medium is it's actually forgiving. You could take a scraper and remove copper to make etched lines shallower and therefore lighter, or even erase lines completely. So I make some adjustments and now I repeat the whole process. Degrease, apply the ground, draw, etch, remove the ground, ink, and print. And here's state 2. Some bad choices here. I showed it to the model and she said something about skin disease, so she didn't get to see it again until it was finished. For each state, I'm almost always doing some kind of step biting, where I draw some lines, etch and rinse, draw some more lines and etch, which continues to deepen the first lines, and repeat. This way I can add varying line thicknesses using the same ground layer. But you have to keep all that in your head, and plenty of times I fuck it up. So I did some scraping and burnishing and printed again, and we're back on track. Then repeat the process. Clean, ground, draw, etch, clean, ink, and print. And here's state 4. I decided to add trees because it's always nice being outside, and I made another pretty unsuccessful attempt to go darker on the face. So I worked these plates back and forth like a painting, etching and scraping and burnishing throughout the process. State 5, state 6, 7, 8. Here I used a roulette tool to apply the sky. The irregularly dotted roller roughs up the copper enough for it to hold ink and create gradients. State 9. Here I'm also experimenting with different papers and different colored inks. 12, 13, 14. Now I'm adding some dry point lines, skipping the acid and drawing directly in the copper. While the etching process removes copper, creating clean, perfect lines, dry point lines just displace the copper, creating a burr. The burr holds ink, and that prints as a feathery, more expressive line. Now I'm at war with the plate, making micro adjustments and printing, trying desperately to achieve an expression. On the 27th attempt, it reached a point where I was finally afraid of destroying it. I thought the expression had something sincere about it, so it was time to walk away. When the plate is finished, it's time to print a run, which is making copies. Then it's nice to have some help. So we'll show you how we do that in the next video.